Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 7th of September 2012. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of community interaction, gaming discussion, and all that good stuff. You can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, that's mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, with topics for future shows. The game in the background is once again PlanetSide 2. We've got a few more videos of this particular play. There's some pretty cool squad platoon and outfit-based stuff that comes later on. First email comes in from Kyle. It says, I've got a question for you. Is it okay to call out YouTubers that have a considerable backing of fans? I found while commenting on some of my favourite people to watch that it can be next to the worst idea to disagree with whatever they're talking about in the video. These famous YouTubers seem to have a rather largely inflated ego, not only become rather nasty with you, but have no problems banning you from watching the channel. I can see why the YouTubers in question have control over this, because of course it is their channel and their content they produce. It just seems wrong that because your own opinions may not follow the ones they have, you're subject to being banned. Has YouTube ever been a place where you can freely voice your opinion, even if it's in a very reasonable way? The fans of these prominent people will rip you one side down the other for disagreeing with the video or the idea of it. Just wanted some insightful clarification. It's interesting that you should send that to me, actually, because I think that very criticism could be leveled in my particular direction, and it's not entirely unfair to say that. I mean, I have banned people from the channel before. I've had people to do that now, for the most part, but every now and again I'll venture into the comment section and see something that's just soul-crushingly stupid and then just ban the guy. I think the main problem that we've got on YouTube is that it's essentially completely beyond saving. Google have even had ideas about how to improve the general quality of YouTube discourse. They suggested that your YouTube account should be tied to a Google Plus account with your real name there, so just abolishing usernames and things like that. And they thought, well, maybe that might make people more responsible with their comments. I really don't know if it will or not, honestly. Not to mention the fact that I think being an anonymous asshole on the internet, while not exactly something that people should be celebrating, is something that you have the right to do, and you can vent your frustrations. I think it's the same thing you've got to understand if you venture into 4chan. You've got to realize that no one there is actually being serious at any point. They're all bullshitting, they're all saying terrible, horrendous things just because they can, and it's just to blow off steam. At no point should that behavior actually be taken seriously. I think you've got to try and treat YouTube in the same manner. The problem is that while if you go on 4chan, you know that it's BS, on YouTube, you don't necessarily know that. There are people that express these opinions and are willing to put their username to it and continually express these opinions. You can look through the comment history and say, hang on, this guy actually believes this. It's not like some anonymous person that you can't track. You can't look into the post history of a 4chan poster. It's just all anon, one way or the other. So you have no idea who's posting what and why. But if you track someone through YouTube, you can see, well, actually, this guy really thinks this. When it comes down to blocking people from the channel, it really has to be a case of, we are getting rid of this person because they are screwing up the conversation. It is, I think, maybe an unattainable goal to have a comment section that actually has good discourse, and it's all about positivity and all sorts of good stuff. I just don't think that can actually happen on YouTube. I've never seen an example of it. Even the most positive things in the world, like whether it be charity fundraising, playing beautiful music and things like that, you'll always have arguments and fights and nonsense like that. The charity fundraising video we put up saying, hey guys, we just raised 50 grand for charity, that's cool, right? Devolved into an argument that wasn't just borderline racist, it was just straight up racist for the most part. All sorts of nonsense. We put up the Primal Carnage video, and it ended up being a religious argument. I mean, come on! And yet, people still try to police their channels. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I've made, is trying to police the channel, and more to the point, getting involved directly in what's being said on the channel. My idea prior to this, and I think that I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion that I was wrong in thinking that this would actually work, is if you humiliate someone in front of enough people, then surely they will change their ways. But I think actually the opposite happens. They become more set and entrenched in their ways, and they become a really hardcore hater. It's easy to see the transition, I think, between someone that's a fan of your videos, they then say something really stupid, you call them out on it, and then suddenly they become your most hardcore hater. They'll follow you around for years. I mean, I know guys that I disagreed with on WoW Radio and still follow me around to this day. But it's hard to ignore it. It really is. Most YouTubers just don't read their comments, or they'll hire someone to just post platitudes every now and again, say, hey, thank you very much for that. And that looks really nice, doesn't it? But it's dishonest. You can't blame them for being dishonest. Who the hell would want to venture in there? But I think that if you create videos, you want to try and foster a group of people that is genuinely interesting to talk to. And you want to inspire some discussion and discourse surrounding what you've said. But it never ends up that way. Now, I'm not claiming that every YouTuber, myself included, does all of this stuff for the greater good. And more often than not, I'll just look at a comment and I've just gotten up and I'm thinking, oh god, it's another idiot. I just want to slap this guy about. I'm not sure people can really understand what that's like until they read thousands of comments every day. I mean, our channel gets thousands of comments on a daily basis. We get tons of emails, and it is often like just being shouted at constantly by hundreds and thousands of people. And honestly, it can become a little bit much at times. So I can definitely understand why some YouTubers act that way, and that's probably the reason I act that way as well, but it would be nice, I suppose, to have the character to remain aloof over all of it. I don't think that's something I ever developed, and there are other YouTubers that have the same problem, so I guess that's an issue as well. But it can become a greater issue because you have this big fan base following you around. It's like releasing the hounds, as it were. There was an incident yesterday, actually, that I can talk about, where I found this guy who had essentially taken my WTF's intro word for word. You know, the whole, ladies and gentlemen, my name is X, and I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. You know, it basically just taken that and had also created a series called I Suck at League of Legends. It even used the same little symbol next to it, that play button that we use, the little icon. And I posted on that video after Krendor linked it to me and said, you know, come on, this is exactly the same as mine. Come up with something original. It's essentially a rip-off. Didn't tell him to take it down or anything, because it's not like it's freaking copyright or some BS like that, but that caused a gigantic fight. It was my fanboys piled on there because they'd seen the tweet from Krendor, posted a bunch of stuff, and then some guys from 4chan got in there, and the whole bloody thing went to hell. And I think it was at that point that I realized, wow, that escalated quickly. I think with YouTube, it's very much a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you get too involved with your viewer base, then it makes you vulnerable. If you're not involved enough with your user base, then you're accused of not caring. It's a no-win situation for anybody. So long story short, hire someone to do your YouTube comments and stay the hell away from them. That's something I very clearly should do a lot more of. This one comes in from Matthew that says, while checking my Facebook feed a couple of days ago for PlanetSide 2 page, I found that they were offering beta keys through IGN if you signed up. However, upon arriving on the page, I soon learned that in order to get the key, you need to be a paying subscriber member of IGN in order to claim it. Otherwise, you had to wait for the 7th. My question is this: in your opinion, was SRE right in doing this from a marketing standpoint, and whether it is acceptable for IGN to essentially sell beta keys for an otherwise free-to-play game on release? This is not a new thing at all. File Planet used to do this. I used to be a paid member of File Planet because, one, you bypass the queues. This is when downloading big mods and patches was a big deal before Steam actually became prominent and that ceased to become a factor. And they used to do the same thing. They would offer giveaways. I remember getting my beta code for the original Dawn of War as a result of having that and a whole bunch of other stuff, and I never really objected then, and I don't really object now. I think that if you're giving away beta keys, then you kind of have the right to demand something in return, and if Sony is well aware of how that's going to work out, then I don't really see the problem. It's almost like a gating system, really. You have IGN Prime, which is what you're talking about. I even signed up to that. It's pretty good. You get free games like every month, and you gain access to beta codes. It's often easier for me to get a beta code from IGN Prime than it is to get it from the actual developer, depending on the game. So it's not a bad little service, honestly. As much as I am not really a big fan of IGN's coverage, the IGN Prime membership is actually kind of worthwhile. At the moment, SOE isn't really worried about getting a lot of people into their game. They already have a bunch of full servers. This is something you got to understand. And they're still trying to wrestle with the code to optimize it and to get it to work properly. You get a lot of people in one place, then stuff has a tendency to chug. There's frame rate problems. I'm running the game in medium, and I am getting somewhere between 30 and 50 FPS for the most part. In a battle, it's more like 30. And I'm running a 680 with a 3930K, which is reasonably meaty. I mean, that's pretty much top end. It could be better. I could have SLI, I could have a 690, but it's still pretty top end. So they've got a lot of work to do there. I think the least of their problems right now is having more people to test their game. They already have quite a few full servers. Now, the question is, at this point, do you view beta as a marketing tool or as a real beta? And I have to ask, well, why not both? Why can't it be both? The beta for PlanetSide 2 is very ropey. It's got a lot of problems, and there are a lot of changes being made. It's very clearly a real beta. Dawn of War was the same. When I played Dawn of War originally, you have no idea how unbalanced that beta was. You could essentially rush a fire prism in about 3 minutes. It was that imbalanced. Eldar just absolutely wrecked everything. There was a bug where Apothecaries and Pain Boys made squads permanently invincible. It was that broken, and that's the kind of balance discussion that had to be had. A whole bunch of stuff had to be fixed up in order to make that work. Now, was that a marketing beta, or was it a real beta? Well, I think more often than not now, we're actually seeing betas become both. There was this period where a beta was just a demo, right? But now they're coming out earlier and earlier, they're letting more and more people in, NDAs are becoming less and less of an issue, and they're willing to let people just bash on the game and try and figure out what's actually wrong with it, because it's essentially crowdsourced QA. Very, very useful indeed, and often spots things that you otherwise wouldn't see. It's very easy to get very close to a game and not really understand the balance problems with it. Whereas you can know for a fact that the internet gaming scene will very easily spot balance problems, even if it gets it wrong sometimes. It's easy enough to filter through that and find out what's legit feedback and what isn't. When all is said and done, consider that they can give beta codes to whoever they damn well please. They can give them to organizations for giveaways. They can do a premium system with, say, IGN Prime. IGN Prime needs this kind of stuff in order to maintain a decent service, because otherwise there'd be no point. If they're not getting free games and they're not getting good betas, then there's no point in actually paying for it. So it's a bit of quid pro quo. If you give those codes and allow IGN to do that, then IGN may in return give you some more promotion, give you exclusivity, give you all sorts of other stuff. So I don't really blame SOE or indeed any other company for actually doing this with beta codes, especially since this is not the only place to get them, and SOE prioritized veterans first. So it was the PlanetSide vets that got into the game to begin with. It's not like they said, oh, you gotta pay to get in on the first wave. No, this is like the 5th or 10th wave. So no, I don't think it's a big deal. This one comes in from Han that says, almost 10 years ago when I used to play MMOs, some MMOs had servers with age restrictions which divided young and old gamers. Server 1 is 18 plus, for example. This was possible due to the fact that I resided in a country where social security number was required for every account, but this was ineffective because many kids just bypassed the system by using their parents' social security number for their account, me being one of them. I found the idea of dividing young and older gamers into separate communities in the game to be interesting, even though I highly doubt there will be any way to keep the kids from bypassing the system when this is applied. I would like to hear your thoughts on whether this system would be desirable for gamers and a viable feature for future games, not just MMOs. Well, you've almost answered your own question on the subject of viability. How the hell do you enforce that? Do you require a credit card? Well, that's no good, because it's easy enough to borrow your parents' credit card or whatever. Social security number, bypassed by taking your parents'. What the hell do you suggest? Retinal scanning? It's nigh on impossible, I think, to properly enforce this, which is a shame, because, yes, it is very desirable. I think as gamers get older and older, they become less and less willing to play with kids. They don't want to censor themselves because there might be kids in the room. They certainly don't want to have to deal with the screeching and the whining and the immaturity that has a tendency to come along with those of the younger age. And once again, this is not saying that everyone who's young is immature, but let's be honest, there is a higher proportion of immature teenagers and children than there are immature adults. Although, at this rate, I'm thinking not by much. There's the older generation of gamers that was brought up with stuff like the BBC Micro, the Spectrum, the Amstrad, the Commodore 64, the Atari 2600, and of course the whole range of consoles from the NES all the way up through to the Genesis, the N64, and things like that. And then you've got a newer generation of gamers that essentially didn't really start doing anything until the 360 and the PlayStation 3, or maybe even the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I have a feeling that there's this fundamental difference in the way that these two groups actually approach gaming. There are people that genuinely believe that Halo was the first real FPS because, of course, it was the first really good FPS on console. Ergo, anything before that couldn't have actually existed, so everything's a ripoff of Halo, everything's a ripoff of COD, and I don't know, it just becomes a massive headache for everybody. It would be wonderful to be able to segregate servers off like that. It really, really would, but I just don't see a good way of doing it. That said, the point that you made that some people can bypass it does not necessarily mean it shouldn't be there. You can speed, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be laws about what speed you can go at. There's always going to be a way around everything if someone is determined enough. Just because a thief can break into your house doesn't mean you shouldn't lock your doors. The problem, I think, is that if you create age-restricted servers, then you make people more willing to try and bypass the restrictions to get on them if they happen to be underage. It's almost like setting a challenge. It's putting a target there. It's the holy mecca. It's the reason why a lot of 13-year-olds really want to see R-rated movies. I know that's how I was when I was younger. When I first saw The Terminator when I was 12, it was like, ooh, it was a legal, illicit thrill for me, because that was 18 rated in the UK. How dare I do that? Truly, I'm a rebel. But I don't necessarily think that just because it would be a target for that kind of behavior, and just because it is possible to bypass it given enough work, that you shouldn't try and do it anyway. Because even if there are some kids that end up on that server, even if that is the case, then you still have, hopefully, a strong community of adults, and you have a good pool of players to actually get involved in, and I would genuinely like to see it tried. It's very possible to do it on private servers for FPS if it's properly adminned. If you find out someone is underage, then it's easy enough just to ban them. But there's no question, I think, that for some people, the increased presence of kids and teenagers does make you less willing to actually get involved. I know I have my voice chat turned off in a lot of games because there very well might just be some teenager screeching about whatever, and I don't want to shout at kids. I mean, come on, I really, really don't want to do that. If I know it's a kid, I don't want to just blast them on the internet. I don't want to get into a fight with a child. It would be nice to not actually have to even worry about that being a possibility and go on a server and know that everyone's going to be 18 plus and they're just going to be talking in a regular manner, and it's going to be a bit of adult trash talking and jostling and competitive play, and no nonsense with screeching histrionics generated by teenagers with a little bit too much caffeine in their system. That said, after all that, and espousing the virtues, I would like to point out the other side of that. The other possibility is if you create this 18+ server, then it just becomes a haven for perversion. It's just nothing but cybering and really dirty stuff, depraved nonsense, and it doesn't actually become the mature bastion of thought and reason that you thought it would. It actually can become worse. You can say all you like about the ability of adults to act in a grown-up manner, but I think we're all capable of being childish every once in a while, and if you get too many of us in one place, you can even get some worse drama than what you would get from a bunch of teenagers and kids fighting it out. So while I would like to see this happen, and I'm kind of surprised that we don't get more of them, I am not entirely convinced that it would work. Worth trying, though, certainly. As I said, that was a long time ago. As you pointed out, that was over a decade ago. It would be interesting to see a AAA MMO come out and say, this server is for adults, and it requires this kind of verification. Let's see how it turns out. If it doesn't work out well, then, well, server transfers and close it down. Easy enough. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day, and also me done for the week with Mailbox. Thank you very much for watching. I've had a lot of reports that, once again, we've had subscriber box problems. Fun frickin' times. It's been reported to YouTube. Hopefully they'll get it resolved. But once again, remember, it's very easy to find our videos. Just go to youtube.com/cynicalbrit. You can use Total Halibut as well. We just got another name pointing there since it makes more sense. youtube.com/cynicalbrit. And you can check the videos page there. We've got a latest playlist, all sorts of stuff. And we've also got some of the PAX footage coming up. So that should be fun to watch. Thank you very much, folks. Have a great weekend, and I shall see you next time.